So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another album review of the Chill Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today we're going to talk about the sixth new album by Italian symphonic death metal band called FLESHGOD APOCALYPSE. And yes, they're a band that have been around now since 2007, and I actually got to see them live in 2016 right here in Puerto Rico. And yes, they're a very theatrical band. When they go on stage, they're dressed like in garments from, like very old eras. So they really sell the part. And they've always had a mesh of like the symphonic hard death metal with also like operatic vocals and like touches of like classical music into the death metal style. So for this album, this is the first album after Francesco, the lead guitar player and singer's like near fatal accident that he suffered while he was mountain climbing in 2021, and he fell down and woke up days later in a hospital and spent years trying to recuperate from his injuries. So he didn't know if he was gonna like play guitar, if he was going to be able like even to walk properly. So out of like tragedy, he turned that tragedy and almost near-death experience into art. And opera is 10 tracks, and it's like a 10-act opera. So it goes through all the stages of what Francesco suffered from, falling almost to his death, to the agony of not being able to play music again, and finally being able to succumb all that tragedy and come out with with one of probably the band's most intense but also accessible albums, in my opinion, in recent times. So yes, this album, it's a concept record about that accident, and I like it that it's structured in a way that is like an opera act, because it really works well. Francesco is great, but also you have to mention the woman singer. Her name is Veronica Bordaccini, and she gives an outstanding, vocal performance. She gives that opera side to the band, and not only opera sides. There's a few songs where she actually sings in a different way. So the two voices from them combined really make this album stand out and makes like you need Francesco's like harsh death metal vocals, but you also need Veronica's vocals, to give it like a great balance, if you will, to this track. So yeah, the album, like I said, it's it's structured in act. So out of those 10 tracks, like I said, there's 2 tracks that really are more of like an intro and an outro to the album. So there's actually like 8 proper tracks for this. So I'm gonna mention the tracks that to me stand out. First of all, the second track on the record is called I Can Never Die. And basically, this is this is like a big FU to death from Francesco. Like, yes, I fell from that mountain, but I am still here. And it's quite ballsy, if you ask me, the way that he does this. But it's a great track. It's very bombastic. There's a lot of like blast beats, like really blasting away with some of the orchestration and the classical music that they mix into their sound. So it's a great album opener. Then you have 2 tracks that were singles, like Pendulum and Blood Clock, and they're they follow most of that same formula. But you know what? They're not my favorite tracks from the record. I would say my favorite tracks from the record, besides I Can Never Die, I think At War With My Soul, which is right in the middle of the record. It's a great album, like great representation of the band. It's really, At War With My Soul is like a part on the story where he's like, like Francesco is in agony and pain, and he's at war with himself, like do I want to live? Do I want to die? Do I want to go on like this? So it's a great song, both lyrically, Francesco's performance and Veronica's performance really blend in. And I think this is one that has one of the best choruses on this record. And being in the middle, it's really like a very focal point of the story for me. in this record, because the songs that the four songs that like the songs that follow this are great as well. You got a song like Morphine Waltz, which is like all over the place and very chaotic, and thus it feels like this whoever wrote this was going for a morphine trip. I really like that. It's very over the top, very theatrical, so great track. But the most, to me, accessible songs on this record are Matrixide 821 and Till Death Do Us Part. On those songs, I think Veronica shines with her vocals, and she's not doing straight operatic. She's like doing like very like clean singing. It felt like a Nightwish track at some point, even though it has some death metal elements, but it had something else and new for that I don't think the band has done in the past, because mostly before the Veronica still stuck to those opera vocals, but in here she sings differently, and I think it's a great, and it's more accessible to maybe people that do not follow symphonic death metal. And I like those tracks because of that. My only complaint at the end of Till Death Do Us Apart, it starts fading away with Veronica's like vocals going softer, but then there's like a scratch like in the music, which I don't know why they did it, and then it goes into opera, which is the piano instrumental. And what I would have done differently is I would have done that and go into the piano instead of that screeching sound, which really wasn't good to the ears and didn't make sense to me. But I didn't write the record, so maybe there's something important in that. So my complaints with this record is that sometimes I think the band tries to do too much. There's too much going on sometimes, and sometimes I think the blast beats can overshadow the more classical aspects of the band. It's like, yes, I know you have to have blast beats, but do they need to be all the time? There's a few songs that start, like for example, Pendulum Bloodstock, they start always like with a blast beat. And sometimes I'm like, I would rather them like build momentum and not start like bombastic right away all the time, because it becomes like very samey to me. So that's a minor nitpick, and maybe I think the album sounds like there's so much going on sometimes that I think if they strip down sometimes, I think it would be best. You don't need to have that like classical things on everything, but again, this album is called Opera, so it serves the purpose of this record. So minor those nitpicks, I still think this is a very strong record, probably one of the best FLESHGOD Apocalypse albums that they have released. I like the story of the album. I think they really captured the feel of being in an opera in different acts, and like Francesco turned tragedy into art. So I want to know from you, Couchers, what do you think of Opera by FLESHGOD Apocalypse? What are your favorite tracks? Comment down below and let me know. And if you like the videos that I'm putting out, do not forget to give me a like, and do not forget to subscribe. That helps me with the YouTube algorithm to get to more people like yourself. So until next time, people, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.